Hi and welcome in this new video. Hope you're doing well, hope your day is great, and stay because you are going to discover the truth about Airflow. More specifically, 6 misconceptions about it, for which some of them haven't been true for the past 2 years. So if you want to know what is Airflow today, fasten your seatbelt, take a deep breath, and let's go. Hi, my name is Mark Lamati. I'm the head of customer education at Astronomer, best-selling instructor on Udemy. And if you don't want to miss any video about Airflow and others, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. That will help me a lot. Before resetting your old impressions of Airflow, I would like to mention that this video is hugely based on the great work of Henry Weller, who did a wonderful blog post about Airflow and the misconceptions of it, so please go check it out. You will find the link in the description below. Okay, if we look at what happened for the past year with Airflow, this is pretty incredible. I mean, we got a release almost every month, and the release velocity of Airflow has picked up quite a lot if you compare with what we had 2 years ago. And that means the community behind Airflow is extremely active and it grows alongside data teams' needs and new use cases. But at the same time, it might be hard to keep up with the pace, and it's easy to get stuck with the old version of Airflow and the bad impressions that you can have because of that. The goal of this video is not to say that Airflow is perfect, nothing is perfect, but I want to give you the truth about what Airflow is as of today. So without further ado, let's start with the first misconception. It's hard to get started with Airflow. We can divide that in 2 parts. The first one is installing Airflow and the second one is writing your DAGs in Airflow. If we begin with the first one, Airflow is not that hard to install. In fact, Airflow has 4 main components: the web server, the scheduler, the database, and the triggerer. Now, if you want to set up a production environment, it will be a bit harder because it's a production environment, so you have to be careful and take care of a lot of things. But at the end of the day, you are able to run and scale Airflow as you want in your environment, on Kubernetes, on Docker, or any other managed services if you want to. In addition, if you want to install and run Airflow on your local machine, it's extremely easy. You just have to execute one command with the official Docker Compose file and you have a fully functional Airflow instance running on your machine. Also, if you want to set up a local development environment, you can use the Astro CLI, which is a command line interface built by Astronomer, so you get all you need to experiment Airflow, test your DAGs, and much more. By the way, I don't know why, but many people think that you need a lot of resources just to run Airflow. That's not true. You can run Airflow on a 2 GB of RAM machine, and I made a video about it, so don't hesitate to check it out if you want to learn how. The second part of getting started with Airflow is DAG writing. And DAG writing doesn't have to be complicated as well. In fact, this is a DAG in Airflow where you have 2 tasks and you share data between those 2 tasks. If you know what is a DAG, what is a task, how to write Python functions, you're pretty much good to go. Also, to simplify DAG authoring, you can use the Astro SDK, which is a Python library for rapid development of ETL or ELT workflows. The second misconception is that the UI isn't great, and that was true in Airflow 1.x. If you remember, you had this UI which was a bit clunky and you had to manually refresh many pages to track task instances and DAG runs. That wasn't very convenient, but that hasn't been true for the past 2 years. In Airflow 2.0, the UI got a major improvement, as you can see here. Now all the views to monitor DAG runs and task instances auto-refresh thanks to this little button that you have right there. In addition, the tree view that got pretty messy when you had a lot of tasks and dependencies, guess what? It is gone. If you look at one of your DAGs, then click on it, you land on the grid view, which is much simpler to visualize the history of your DAG runs and task instances. In addition, you get statistics about your DAG runs just by clicking on them, and you can even get the logs of your tasks right in that view. If you need, you can even attach notes to your task instances or your DAG runs. That might be helpful to communicate with your teammates if something has changed in your DAG runs or task instances. Then you have the datasets view, which is truly great to monitor the dependencies between your DAGs and actually your datasets. We will come back at this notion later in the video. So there are many features that explain why the UI is much better than before. Another misconception is that the scheduler of Airflow is unstable, and I would like to start talking about performances. We all remember those latency issues that we had between the tasks. That's what we saw very often on Stack Overflow, people asking why there is this huge latency time between the execution of my tasks. But this is over. Since Airflow 2.0, the scheduler got huge improvements and fixes, so now it's extremely fast to execute your tasks. In addition, in Airflow 1.10.x, you had only one scheduler, so if that scheduler goes down, then your production environment is stuck and you cannot execute any more tasks. That's why in Airflow 2.0, now you can run as many schedulers as you want, so not only you can execute as many tasks as you need, but at the same time, if one scheduler goes down, you still have the others, so your production environment stays up and running. The fourth misconception about Airflow is that it supports only static workflows, and this is so far from the truth. Let me show you a couple of examples. Let's say you want to generate a static number of tasks, and for that, you can use a loop. If you know how to make a loop in Python, then you know how to do it in your DAGs. In that example, we'll use a list comprehension in order to create 5 tasks as defined in the range function. And you can see below that we have the 5 tasks. The good thing is we didn't have to write each task one by one. But at the same time, you can argue that this is not truly dynamic because you had to give the number of tasks that you want. Well, guess what? There is a new feature in Airflow which is dynamic task mapping. With dynamic task mapping, you can generate a number of tasks according to something that you don't know in advance. So for example, you have the task add and you use the method expand with one of the arguments that this task takes. For example, x. X takes a list of a random number of values. According to this number of random values, you will get 7 tasks, then the next day you will get 10 tasks, then the next day you will get 8 tasks you don't know in advance. And this is truly useful. For example, if you have a bunch of files but you don't know what those files will be, then you can use dynamic task mapping to create one task for every file. Or you have a SQL request and you don't know in advance what will be the output, but you want to create one task for every record that you get. Again, you can use dynamic task mapping for that. Dynamic task mapping is truly powerful as you can generate tasks on something that you don't know in advance. In addition, you have a couple of frameworks that you can use to make your life easier. For example, you have a framework to generate DAGs according to YAML files, or you have another framework which is Cosmos. And Cosmos is a framework for dynamically generating DAGs from other tools and frameworks. And guess what? You can generate DAGs according to your dbt project. And as you can see, it takes only one operator, which is dbt task group, and that generates for you a DAG corresponding to your dbt project, as you can see below. That will save you a ton of time. Trust me. The fifth and maybe the most controversial misconception about Airflow is data sharing. Oh, what a topic. Okay, I want to tell something right now. Regardless of the data orchestrator you use, that data orchestrator will always store the data somewhere so that you can share that data between the tasks. It can be XComps with Airflow, or it can be something else in another data orchestrator, but at the end of the day, the data orchestrator will always have to store the data somewhere so that you can share that data between your tasks, especially if this data is big. Now, if we come back at Airflow, before Airflow 2.0 and actually before the task-free API, you had to share data like that by using XComp pull and XComp push. As you can see, it's a lot of code and it's not convenient to write. That's why now with the task-free API, you can do the exact same thing, sharing data between the task A and B with much less code. As you can see here, this code does the exact same thing as before. It shares data between the task A and B, but with much less code. This is much cleaner, easier to write, easier to read, so that's the new way of sharing data with the task-free API. Again, behind the scene, it's still the XComps that we use, but the fact that Airflow exposes the XComps, it's truly to give you all the flexibility you need. If you don't want to care about XComps, you don't have to care about them. As long as the data that you share is small. If you want to share more than a gigabyte of data between your tasks, then in that case, you have to set up a XComp backend. And again, this brings you a lot of flexibility. If you want to store your data in a S3 bucket, then you can do it. If you want to store your data in GCS, then you can do it. You are free to do whatever you want, and that is the power of Airflow. But again, if you don't want to care about XComps, you don't have to, as shown right there. You are still able to share data between your tasks. By the way, I have to mention the S3 SDK. It's a framework for rapid development of ETL or ELT workflows in Airflow, and this is very useful if you interact with Snowflake, Redshift, BigQuery, Databricks, or even Pandas. You will be able to share data between your tasks at ease, and trust me, you are going to save a lot of time. So check out the documentation. There are just a couple of operators that you have to check out. The last misconception that I want to talk about is that Airflow is not data aware. For a very long time, the only option that you had to trigger something based on an event is to use sensors. But the thing is, sensors are just waiting for something to happen before executing the next task. So you weren't able to schedule DAGs based on events. By the way, if you use a lot of sensors, check out the differable operators that will truly optimize your resources. Back to the sensors. Since Airflow 2.4, you have the concept of datasets. Think of a dataset as a link to a piece of data that can be a file, that can be a SQL request, whatever you want. As you can see here, you have two DAGs. On the left, you have the producer DAG, and on the right, you have the consumer DAG. The producer DAG is scheduled on a given interval of time, and it has a dataset as shown with myfile.txt. You have a task, update dataset, and as soon as this task updates the file myfile.txt, as defined in the dataset, the consumer DAG which is scheduled on that dataset will be automatically triggered. And now you are able to schedule your DAGs based on data updates. That's it for this video. I hope you learned a lot. Now you know what exactly is Airflow as of today. If you want to discover other common misconceptions about Airflow, click in the link in the description below. You will see the full blog post. And last but not least, I wish you a wonderful day. Take care and see you for our next video.